Hello, everybody. Welcome. Hi, folks. Welcome. We'll get started here in just a moment as people join the webinar. Thank you all for being here. Okay. I think we'll go ahead and get started. So, good evening, everybody. My name is Spencer Johnson. I'm the host of this virtual edition of the Readings from the Room from the Writers' Room of Boston. I'm absolutely delighted to have you all here this evening to join us for this reading. The series was launched in 2021 as a way to reach out to writers in the broader writing community during the pandemic, a way of bringing people together. And it's been a wonderful way to continue to bring writers together and interested audiences as well. Because Zoom allows us to spread out beyond just the Boston area and have welcome people and readers and listeners from all over the place. Tonight we have two readers for you, both from the Boston area. We have one in Cambridge and one in Brighton. And then myself, I'm in Allston, so in Boston as well. For any of you who are new to us as the Writers' Room of Boston, a little bit of information about the space. It's a co-working space in downtown Boston for writers of any level, established and emerging, who want a quiet, comfortable place to write. The room is open 24 hours a day and provides desks and silence and the quiet companionship of other writers. More information can be found online at the Writers' Room of Boston website. I will link that in the chat for anybody who's interested in learning more about the organization. It's been an established organization in Boston since 1993, so it's been around for a long time. And during the pandemic, it moved into doing virtual events and has now, of course, returned also to doing in-person events. But it has become a space for workshops and places to network with other writers and all sorts of fun events and interesting engagements that allow you to be a part of the writing world. So I'm delighted to have two writers with us this evening, Charlie Turner and Jenny Grassl. So we have some fiction and some poetry for you. Our first reader for the evening will be Charlie Turner. Oh, and I should mention also that if you do have questions, we will be doing a Q&A after the readings. You can use the Q&A function of Zoom to submit your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the reading here. So now, without further ado, Charlie Turner is a published writer whose works have appeared in Cult Magazine and Adelaide Literary Magazine. He holds an MFA from Emerson College in fiction and tends to focus his stories on complex, flawed characters who are trying to find their way in the world. In addition to writing, Charlie is an administrator at MIT and enjoys guiding students through their higher education journey. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. Charlie, take it away.
Thank you so much, Spencer, and thank you to everyone who's here. I am thrilled to be reading for you. I'm going to read a short story. This was a story I wrote while in grad school, and it's titled Today is a 5. This next one is going to blow you away, she says, clearing her throat. Are you ready? We're having lunch at a small diner in Dover, Greta and I, and she brought along that small desk calendar I got her for Christmas. Every day features a new fun fact. I'm still processing the last one. Did you know some roads in Australia go more than 90 miles without a single turn? And to counteract driver fatigue, government officials place signs with trivia questions along the side, with answers a few more miles up ahead. There's more, something about the floral emblem of Queensland, but she's moving right along and I can't keep up. Greta's been coming here since she was a girl, something I learned not from her, but one of the nurses. She said that Al's Diner is her place. Born in Berlin, her family moved to the States by the time she was 4 years old, and they frequented Al's because it was cheap and open late. You could be a total stranger off the street, the nurse told me. Seriously, offer to take her to that hole in the wall of a diner, and she'll never question the reason why. At the time, I laughed, trying to think of a motive for getting lunch other than being hungry. But I was reminded that for Greta, very few things are taken at face value. Today is a good day. On the scales the nurses use, it's a 5, perfect happiness. Greta's been radiating all afternoon, and I really think it's because of this calendar. Apparently, she'd forgotten all about it until I picked her up this afternoon. What's this? She asked me, finding it beneath a folded up sweater in her facility apartment, a pocket sized studio that fits a couch, television, bed, and a small dining table. That's all she needs. She was wearing the same astonished face she had when she first opened the gift a few weeks ago on Christmas. A calendar, I explained, with the enthusiasm in my voice to match her discovery, with a lot of interesting and cool facts on each page. Cool facts, she repeated. Like a game? Sort of, I said. More fun than a game. Her interest was there, I could see it. She shoved the calendar deep into her tan leather purse, pushing around lipsticks and loose change to make room. In the seconds leading up to this, I thought about what any other day but today would have gotten me, if today hadn't been a 5, but instead a 3 or a 2. She might have turned her lip at it. She might have thrown it across the room. But today is a 5. Today is a good day. We'd been sitting in our diner booth not even 2 minutes before the calendar came out. It's January, a cold front is moving in, and we're now peeling off the calendar days of March. A stack of ripped pages piles up between us. Okay, shoot, I say. Snakes can belch fire. Can you believe that? What? No way, I say. It's true. Look right here. She tears off the page and slides it across the table. Sure enough, it's right there. I read the description aloud. Many of the world's snakes rely on small mammals, such as mice and chipmunks, as their main source of food. However, on rare occasions, the decomposing food may burst during initial digestion and create a buildup of methane inside the snake's stomach. When this occurs, the snake can belch fire if close enough to a spark. That's just, she hesitates, searching for the word. Crazy. The things you learn from a calendar. Let's do another. This continues until our entrees arrive. Jerry, our server today, places my order of beef chili in front of me and hands the classic turkey club to Greta. She always likes to take it from the server's hands and place it on the table herself, something Jerry has caught on to. The sandwich is her go-to. Me, I try something new on the menu every time we come here, from pastas and paninis to the chimichanga, which for a small town diner run by a white family tastes pretty damn good. Still not tired of that honey gold turkey and mayo, huh, Greta? Jerry asks, leaning into the booth. She peers up at Jerry, trying to place his face. I haven't had one of these since I was a girl. Is it any good? Jerry points to his own bulging belly. It's my favorite on the menu, and this stomach doesn't lie. She takes a small bite of one of the triangles, her eyes close as she chews. Delicious, she says, again with a sense of childlike wonder in her voice. That's the best sandwich yet. It's always the best sandwich. How nice that must be, being able to experience something so great over and over again without it ever getting old. I think of all the movies I'd love to watch again without knowing the endings, or the feeling of getting behind the wheel of a car for the first time. Those moments are hard to come by these days. Jerry returns to the kitchen, and Greta and I continue our routine, eating quietly while the muffled rhythm of America's Top 40 plays on the old speakers. The melody of the tune reminds me of a previous Saturday we were here, a day that wasn't a 5, but rather a 3. We were seated by the window up front because our normal booth was taken, and while Greta couldn't pinpoint what specifically was off about our visit, she was agitated and tense. Potential customers strolled by on the sidewalk, and without warning, she banged on the glass as a woman with a small child was passing. They can't be on my property. Hey! She turned to me, looking for help, and then toward the kitchen and yelled, Muti, the neighbors are back again. They won't leave. We ended our lunch early that day. Muti was what she called her mother. I learned that the first day I walked into her apartment. Muti, is that you? I'm in here. Her voice, so hopeful and excited, it hung in the air as I clicked the door shut and headed toward the bathroom. She was putting a Band-Aid on her finger, paper cut. She'd wanted her mother but got me instead, and I was no replacement. I was simply the wrong person. And I realized quickly I had inadvertently crossed an invisible line into a forbidden territory, a field covered in mines. Whatever I said next would be wrong, regardless of how I said it. When she saw me, she looked at me like I was some wild animal, only here to hurt her. She grabbed the towel off the bar and threw it at me, screaming, Help, help, help. Don't worry, I said, my hands raised in surrender. I had to think fast. Your mom will be home later, I promise. I'm just here to say hello. I'm here to help. The nurses have told me to always agree with her, always boost her up. And so in that moment, that's what I did. She'd forget in 5 minutes that this entire interaction happened in the first place. She wouldn't remember that I broke my impossible promise. It feels strange lying to her sometimes, even if I am a bridge to her preferred reality. Sometimes it takes so long to convince her that I even start to believe Muti will come walking through the door. And when my shift ends and the nurses take my place, they repeat this to her like a mantra. Soon, Greta, soon. Greta finishes the last piece of the sandwich and wipes her mouth, covering the napkin in lipstick. But then she notices the stack of ripped calendar pages between us, furrowing her brow. They must have been out of sight just long enough. She says, "What's all this?" "Those are the fun facts we were just reading. Remember the one about snakes?" Her puff of hair nearly doubles in size when her head presses back into the seat. "The snakes? What snakes?" I show her the paper, which is dated March 7th. She reads it over, mouthing the words rhythmically as though following a mental metronome, and finally meets my eyes. "That's wild. I had no idea snakes could do that." Jerry returns to our table and asks how everything is, and Greta, without hesitation, hands him the calendar page the way someone paying the check with a $100 bill might, confidently. He reads it silently. "Is this true?" Greta looks at me for the answer. "Hey, if it's on the calendar, it's got to be true." "I wonder how they figured that out," he says. "Did they stumble upon it happening? Or, like, was it set up? That's what I want to know." "There's more," Greta says. She hands him a small stack of pages, and Jerry laughs as he flips through them. "Read one to us. I want to hear another." He clears his throat. "The letter Q is the only letter that doesn't appear in a single U.S. state name." Then he stops to consider this. "Huh, I guess that's right." Greta is quick to ask for another. Giraffe tongues can grow to be 20 inches long." And then another. Jerry, seeming to get the hint, goes off in rapid succession. "When flying on an airplane, you lose roughly 30% of your taste buds. A chef's toque contains 100 folds. Cotton candy was invented by a dentist." I adjust a bit in the booth, listening to the facts I've already heard one time through, and watch as Greta's fascination pulls her mind away from the booth. I begin to think of my wife, my beautiful Paige. Would she ever get a kick out of Greta? She used to sit in bed and listen with the same level of interest while I told her about my day working at the bank. At the time, we'd been discussing the possibility of kids. She grew up with 5 brothers and sisters in a cramped house in St. Louis. The finances really hurt her parents' love for each other. They fought daily, often in front of the kids or long after they'd gone to bed. She couldn't sleep with their voices coming through the wall. After their divorce, Paige had such a nasty taste in her mouth from listening to them argue all the time that she made the decision to never have children of her own. Me? I was indifferent. We talked about it before getting married, and she agreed to keep the door open, although she was specific by saying only a smidge. I grew up with only one brother. We weren't poor, but I understood the financial struggles Paige talked about, and I never wanted what happened to her family to then reflect upon us. It was easier to not even risk it. And all these years later, I still wonder if that was the right decision. Jerry reads the last fact in the small pile. The word honeymoon originates from the 5th century, when cultures represented calendar time with moon cycles, and the newlywed couple drank mead, or the honey, during their first moon of marriage. "A moon of marriage?" Greta asks. "I think it means the first night of marriage." Greta nods as though she understands, but her face tells a different story. As Jerry tells us he's going to grab our check, I notice Greta's eyes drifting around the restaurant. She's thinking about her mother again. I can feel it. I place my hand on hers. "You look beautiful today, Greta. Have I mentioned that?" This seems to snag her attention enough. She tells me about her makeup routine, which at her age is just lipstick and blush, and I feel my shoulders relax knowing I've steered the boat out of choppy waters. It's funny, really, feeling like I've run out of things to talk about. Anything I say to her, regardless of what it is, always evaporates. There is no leash on our conversations. I'm the only one who will walk away and still consider what was said. Yet, as I watch her, nothing comes to mind. I try to think of what I'd like to know about her that I haven't already learned. We've walked the path of her history. She's told me about her time spent working for Brown University as a dean's assistant. I've heard her tales of love, of the men that came and went in her life, and how she never found the one. And, of course, her volunteer work at local animal shelters. She loves to bring that up. It's hard to know what the truth is and what's just an entanglement of memories. I suppose it doesn't really matter. If it's real to her, then it's real to me. That's it. There's no harm in letting her live with the confidence that she knows who she is. But there's also no denying my interest in her life experience. There are questions I want to ask, but know will only confuse her. Like, what was it like growing up in the Depression era? Or what she remembers of living in Germany when she was a girl. Was she a rebel, a rule follower? Did she attend church every Sunday? Jerry returns with the check, and I take out my wallet before he can disappear again. It's always the same relative price, no need to look. He leaves with my card, and Greta tilts her head toward my open wallet on the table. Is that a special girl? I look down. Paige's photo rests in the plastic sleeve just beside my bill clip. It's old, taken at least 15 years ago, back when she still had black curls. Has Greta really never seen it before? I can't recall ever talking about Paige, barely a single detail. I say, very special, this is Paige. Paige, she repeats. I like that name. Where did you meet? In college, nearly 30 years ago. She was studying weather patterns. Pretty interesting stuff. She was the most personal girl I've ever met. Always had questions, always kept the conversation moving. And she could listen. Greta, when I say she could listen, she would look in my eyes and whatever was bothering me just went away. Poof, just like that. Like magic, she said. Exactly, I say. Paige was like magic. I go on to tell her the little things, like how she loved to fish and would always make fun of the way I cast it off, or how she always wanted to own a bakery, not because she was especially good at baking, but because she was convinced people were always at their best when picking up pastries. She wanted to be around that energy. And seashells, I said. Oh man, she loved seashells. Paige spent so many weekends just creating art with all the shells she'd collected around New England. You know, I once swam with seals in Hawaii, Greta says. They did tricks underwater, right by my feet. Oh, Paige would have loved that, I say. She always wanted to visit Hawaii. Greta must be happy because she's rocking back and forth, a full grin across her face. Paige sounds like such a nice girl. Where is she now? I want to meet her. And that's when the tempo to our conversation drops a bit. If this were an orchestra, the first chair's string just broke. Well, but something tightens in my abdomen. It moves up my torso and settles heavily in my chest. I'm suddenly looking at a woman across from me that I've known for years, maybe forever. We've grown old together, our hair white and thin. We spend Saturday afternoons reading in the den while our kids, yeah, our kids, spoil us with details of their grown lives. They have children of their own, and they'll all be over for Sunday dinner tomorrow. It's not hard to conjure up. I've dreamt it 1,000 times before. There's a moment right as Jerry returns to place the check on the table that I think Greta and I have switched places. What's real is up for debate. It's hopeful, blissful even. I want her to tell me Paige will be here soon, and I want to believe it. I can see my hope beginning to hang in the air like haze on a humid day, and I realize this must be how Greta feels whenever someone opens her front door. She's at home, I say, and I think of how many times I've wished I could tell someone that and it would be true. I've walked and crawled this path to the point where the trail is worn with my prints. It's fresh with snow for Greta, though, clean and white, no footprint to be seen. Maybe it's best to leave it that way. So I smile at her and say, she would love to meet you. Maybe next time. Next time, she repeats, still rocking. Yes, next time. We gather our things and thank Jerry for another great lunch. See you next week, I tell him as I help Greta slip her arm into her jacket. She picks up the stack of calendar pages from the table, skimming the words, her mouth opening in bewilderment. She holds up the one about long Australian roads and is blown away by it. She asks me to read it, and I tell her I'll take a look when we get to the car. Then, the bell above the front door chimes, and Greta turns like a ballerina in a music box, activated by the noise. Muti, she says. I turn just as quickly, feeling a familiar flutter. We both stare, each in our own world, waiting for someone special to step inside. And that is today is a 5. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. That was marvelous. I've heard that before, and it's been a while, and it's cool to see how it's changed. Um, uh, Thank you very much. If anybody has questions for Charlie, feel free to put them in the Q&A section. Once Jenny has finished her reading, I'll invite him back to do some Q&A with her and with me. So feel free to drop your questions there. And Charlie, if you want to drop a personal website or any other information that where people can find you, go ahead and do that in the chat at your leisure. I would like to now welcome Jenny Grassl. Jenny Grassl lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Her poems have appeared and are forthcoming in the Boston Review, Tupelo Quarterly, Bennington Review, Lana Turner Journal, Fairy Tale Review, and others. Magicholia, she'll have to correct me on the pronunciation of that. Her first book was published by 3A Taos Press in 2024. Her second book, Forever Mistaken Ourselves, was chosen for publication by Tupelo Press for their 2024 open reading period. Thank you for being here, Jenny, and take it away.
Thank you, Spencer, and thank you everyone for being here. It's lovely to have a night of poetry and fiction. I think that being told a story was a real treat. Thank you, Charlie. I'm going to be reading from my new book, Magicolia, out from 3 at House Press. And I think I'm just going to launch right in. Okay, so poetry time. First, I'll tell you that Magicolia is really about the intersection of magic and madness. And I think we already touched on those themes in the last reading. So this first poem is called Spell for Rescue in a Catastrophe. Be prepared, be coiffed. Anthropocene alive you are, because your mirror labored. Riddle of camisole crink, angled hairline wave, command shimmer arms of sequin dew, damask georgette moire, albumin thickened pearls, bejewel your strong thigh lambs, running from tundra wolves. Alter no man's triage of women. Angel fake be lemon-haired. Bewitch suitors' bricolage tastes. Rescue likely in haute couture. Accents androgyne and thin. Crux of your candor, slender-heeled. Astral shift dress, a silver sliver. Drunk on opera silk, manage aplomb in planets dive. Forage blinked eyeshadow blued. Revise the central hall of shame. After party landfill shoes. So this is a Romanian folktale reimagined called Morosco, the Frost King. And the freezing girl answers the question, "Are you warm, child?" using a dictionary. Each of her answers is a definition of the word fine, which is her answer. And for lying, she is rewarded with furs and jewels. "Are you warm, child?" "I am fine, fine, free from dross or alloy. Something you owe. I am finished at the end and contain a given percent of pure. I am not turbid. I am absolute and in good health. Of immaterial things, say I am elevated. I consist of filaments or slender threads, very small bulk, attenuated, rare. I cut a small margin, appearing in small print, with delicate perception, artful cunning, fine and dandy. I am often used ironically, remarkably good looking, and weather in which the sky is bright, highly showy in dress. My writing is affectedly ornate. Also, I am what is said of a good woman, to make little, thin, to break into particles. So the next poem is related. It's the girl's story. Unzipped from my skin, my dress leaves teeth marks. His gift of fur beneath me, bare for lying. I am supposed to love fur and falsehood. Jewel-frosted windows furl his fiended company, my body to please the shatter of rhyme. Why tease another skirt from drift with lipstick berries in the snow? I try to draw a bow over a determined point on my upper lip to speak the lie. I am warm. I am strong in my goosebumps. I know to pretend a melt with the frost flowers on his bed, pooling honey in the sunless sheets. Or else I will eat moss with the reindeer. I must deny ice diamonds, cutting me into facets and faults. My empty shoes point to the exit. My sisters speak the toads of truth. Of course I am cold, you fool, and of course they die. So the title of my next poem comes from a phenomenon in outer space called a bipolar nebula. And it's two stars that are collapsing and emitting gases and dust, and they're in the shape of a moth or butterfly wings. It's really very beautiful. And the name of it, Bipolar Nebula, is the reason I was attracted to write about this. I am of two stars, collapsed envelope of dust and gas, open and close moth, the lover half, metamorphic ache, a hanging and wet. My center cannot choose, I hold the kiss, proboscis drinking galaxy tears. Compound eye borrows, moldered apple, cold bile. Even flowers are skullcap and swamp candles. Oh, loss I go spare, in dress of dawn char. Of the maniacal roving madness, a flirt, skirted sails fill and empty. I want to sleep with all the victors of the new world, confect in ease, lay many eggs. Night gowned knocking at clock bright, sun up all night, chain reactive lace. High on holes of design and chewed wool, flowers are fatal, and I don't care. If everything means cascading, I can not. Smallest done thing destroys. I radiate ragged, death tease, flutter of mine. So for the next poem, I want to share with you the meaning of a word. It's Ka, which comes from ancient Egyptian religion. And it's basically something that survives death and in the afterlife has to find a home in a painting or a statue. So this poem is called End Song. Mostly she worries about Ka, surviving after death, condemned or elated to witness the slow repeal of the body. She speaks only of a washing and lapping inside, spirit against the ribs, a kind accompanying, alive. But the expiring earth may keep a soul, and where shall it live? She sees a blue place in the warm and cool of telescoped stars, in her phone, aroused billions of light years ago, sparking in a pocket of space. A planet begins in galaxy foreplay, a heat wave bobble of flowering. The stars shall weld gold rings to skeletons, sunflowers to their skies, each apocalypse to a genesis. So I have one more poem if I still have some time here. It's not very long. greens of every latched place. Our last-minute dead carousing, wolves and passerines foundering, once bolted in, kept only by size of habit. Angels ease heaven's lock to latch. My double espresso steams a swan with broken wing, down to grounds, bottom of the cup losing curves to chaos and farther weather. Lindens wait for little clapper fruits to harden their seed and ring, tolling, grand and spent perfume. I pressed a fog once between my knees to rain for you, rosemary or wine, tang of storms and dulcets. Every moment is an extinction, the crosswind of spirit drinking loam, trying on frond and green bond, all the graffiti famished, the book signing the hand, skin racing into its own summer, ink pleasures deep, tagging the body with yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. That was those were all quite lovely. And Charlie, if you'd like to join us again, we have a couple of questions. I think we have one in the chat right now, specifically for Charlie, and then I've got a couple of questions as well, to facilitate some conversation here. And if anybody else wants to throw a question in the Q&A, we have one for Jenny in there right now, it looks like. So we'll start with the question for Charlie, and of course, Jenny, if you'd like to speak to this as well. I'm always interested in influence, and everybody seems to be when talking to artists. And I'm always interested in the influence for specific works, not just like overall influence, but so I will extend NJ's question to Charlie. What was the specific influence for this particular story? Were there any other writers you had in mind, or other stories or things that you were trying to build off of or borrow from? And then Jenny, if there are any influences for any of the poems you read for us this evening that you would like to share as well, that would be lovely.
Yeah, no, that's a great question because there's a lot that influenced this piece. I think personally, growing up, I had a grandmother that had dementia, and the dynamic between me and her was always just very interesting, both in terms of just when she would ask me things about my life and knowing she wasn't going to remember, there was always that thought of like, I could say anything, there's, and on top of that, I was very into magic tricks as a kid. And to discover that my grandmother would forget the trick I would do each time, it allowed me to practice on her a lot. So there's kind of this personal element of I wanted to write a story between someone with a deteriorating mind and another person that is kind of walking that path with her, trying to discover what about her is true, and if it matters. So that's kind of the personal influence on that. But at the time, I believe I was reading authors such as Lydia Davis, Amy Hempel. There's definitely another in there, and I'm blanking on their name.
I
But
see the Amy Hempel influence. That comes through.
I appreciate it. Yeah, Amy Hempel is one of my favorite writers. If anyone here is unfamiliar with her work, she writes of all different lengths, which is such a strange way to describe her work. But she has some stories that are a paragraph, some stories that are 30 pages, and they all hit just as hard. And her choosing of words is very particular. And I tried to go into this story in a similar way, thinking about the words I was using, thinking about the tone, because I wanted this to kind of portray both a sad story, because I think at its heart there is a sadness here, but there's also kind of a level of playfulness, of whimsy. And I think Amy Hempel and Lydia Davis does it as well. They're able to tap into that kind of gray area between sadness but also playfulness. And so I tried to kind of work on that, with this story, kind of put those two elements together. So yeah, a lot of different influences, but I think those were the main ones.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Charlie. Jenny,
Yeah.
any influences in particular?
I'm sorry, what was the
Oh,
question?
sorry. Any particular influences for any of your poems that you'd like to share?
Oh, I've always been interested in Lucy Brock-Broido. She's my favorite, and she was a magical poet, and this use of language as spell and magic really stuck with me, and I'm always dipping into her just for inspiration. There are others, Gerard Manley Hopkins, Gillian Connolly, Sylvia Plath. Um, and as far as influences in life, you know, influencing the work, I had some experience with magical thinking, and it was an illness, but it was also the cure for the illness. So writing got me through it, and I just really appreciate the power of language to work miracles.
Yeah, and there were some beautiful lines in your poems, and I loved um, I liked that in several of your poems, I noticed this sort of juxtaposition of scale from like the galactic scale of the bipolar nebula, and although even just in that poem, from that down to the scale of the moth. But then in others, you had these talking about the heavens, talking about angels, but then talking about your double espresso. And I always love the juxtaposition of sort of the magical and the mundane in writing. And I think your poems sort of brought those together in a really powerful way. And yeah, the way language ties those things together is really beautiful. Jenny, we have a question for you in the question and answer section here. It says, Jenny, when you read, it sounds like your poems might be made of pieces and parts. What do your poems look like on the page?
I will be happy to show you something. If I can locate it here, be quick. The poem that I read, End Song, looks like this. Can you see anything? Probably not, but maybe it's kind of a landscape, and it's a field of lines, and the spaces are silence and pacing, and so it looks kind of random or jumbled, but it's really more like a score for reading, where you can pause and where you can speed up and slow down, and yeah, so that's what it looks like.
Yeah. I like that you say that it's like a score. I've heard other poets talk about the way they structure things on the page being almost like reading directions for your readers without saying specifically, read it this way. You are guiding them to read it a certain way through the way that it looks on the page. And I always find that fascinating as well, the ways that you can shift the way we think about different lines and different pacing and the rhythms of the poems.
Mhm.
Just with the way things look on the page. Yeah, that's marvelous. Well, I think we're a little over our time here, so I will wrap things up for us. Sorry we didn't have more time for the Q&A, but I mean your answers were wonderful and your readings were both fantastic. It was so great to have you both here. I noticed some sort of, like you pointed out, Jenny, some sort of alignment in terms of themes in the poems and in Charlie's story, and I always find that fascinating too when the readers overlap in that way. So thank you both so much for reading for us this evening. Thank you all in attendance for coming here to listen. I just one of the greatest pleasures of my life to be able to share wonderful writers with lots of wonderful people, because I think that's an important thing that we can do. Jenny, Charlie, is there anywhere we can find more of your work? Anywhere that we should look out for more of your work? If anything is coming up, please share that with us now.
Shall we put it in the chat, or is it too late? Probably.
We can put things in the chat. It won't stay there for long, but it'll at least give people a chance to click on it before we end the webinar.
So what I can say is I'm putting my website in the chat now. I'm working on a website redesign. So it's going to look very different probably in the next couple of weeks. But if you want to see what it looks like now, you are more than welcome to.
You get a sneak
Uh,
preview of before
exactly.
the change.
I did link the other stories that I've had published. I do link on the website. So if you're curious in reading more from me, they're right there for you.
Great. Thank you, Charlie. And Jenny, I know you have a book coming out as well, and you have your website here too. So please follow these writers, find these writers, read more of their work. That's what all of this is all about, getting people to get to know some writers. So once again, thank you all so much. Thank you for being here, everybody. Please look out for information about our next reading from the room. It will be on the last Tuesday of February, which is, I believe, February 25th. I will be hosting that again, and information about readers will come shortly on the website. And if you have any questions about Writers Room of Boston, please email info@writersroomofboston.org. That is a great way to get more information. And of course, you can visit the website, writersroomofboston.org. Thank you once again for a wonderful evening of reading.
Thank you.
See you all next time.
Awesome.